Alrighty, let's get this going. Welcome to the stress fest that is me. You're welcome. Here we go. Let's set that mood. Welcome to my talk, Ensuring the Quality of Your Quality Insurance. So this is me. Currently I am the full-time, oh wait, hold on, this isn't quite right. There we go. Currently the full-time community manager at Tin Man Games, formerly full-time quality assurance analyst at Kixeye. Now, we've all seen some great talks today. I cannot assure the quality of this one. As community manager, I'm learning don't make promises you can't keep. So please feel free to use the hashtag JustOKQA today. Thank you. Just so then if I run over time with questions and things like that and I can't get to it straight away. Quick show of hands. So who is currently doing QA positions? Got a few. Awesome. Who are people who might be hiring QA in the future? Great, fantastic. And here's Meredith Hall. Hi. Special entrance. Yeah. So what is quality assurance? Please tell me. I don't know, but so expectations going into video games quality assurance is, playing games all day. We know that's not quite the fact. It's a lot of other things that just keep going and going and going. The definitions change depending where you are, where you're working. So this is one that I've been using. So quality assurance is actively reporting the actual results of a feature or a project while comparing it to the expectations of various sources. Now, when we look at that, one thing that stands out is who are these various sources. So, example of these sources, production and design. So, we're looking at documentation, you're looking at what the actual project is supposed to be, right? Then we have the users themselves, the audience. We're looking at people who enjoy your game and love to play it. Especially when it comes to games as service, early access, this is kind of integral. And then investors and clients and other third parties. Legal requirements needed when meeting particular milestones, and probably the greatest of priorities because QA needs to know what is needed for the money. And that's why you're here. But what does testing look like at a glance? Well, if we look at the state of testing, 2019 report. So this was done by Practitest and Tea Time with Tester. I do highly recommend checking out their blogs. They are very informative and a great resource if you're unsure about QA practices. But if we're looking at this survey, so multiple people around the world. For Australia, it was about 3.5% of the survey. At a glance, we see that most of the common roles being engineers, your testers, leads. Most people got into testing by accident. This guy. Most testing sizes are small, 1 to 5, and most work with agile or agile development models. At a closer glance, just at the testers, we can see 51% of their time is just spent testing. Most people said that they learned testing just by doing it. 52 are not concerned about the stability of their jobs, meaning that they pretty comfy, which is good. It's more than I can say. The main takeaway is currently testers are made up of independent, self-motivated people, and that's what we like to see. When to hire? Now. Why not? You probably got the time. But to be realistic, you probably might not have the resources, especially smaller companies, as we know money and everything is finite. You might not be able to get 50 people to come test your game and pay them all individually. That is just not doable. So let's look at realistic project sizes. So the team that you currently have. So if you've got 1 to 3 people, consider contracting, getting outside sources in. Consider user testing and feedback at events like PAX, getting people to sign up for a mailing list to be a part of the community for alpha and beta testing. We recently had closed beta testing for our game, Warhammer Underworlds Online. Make sure to check it out. And it was great. It was invaluable feedback that we will definitely use moving forward. 4 to 7 people on the team, you could probably consider hiring a consult. So someone who can come in and establish routines and everything for QA practices. Then moving forward, you can consider hiring casual part-time people, because then those practices are in place and you've already established something. You can work within that. Contracting, etc., etc. 8+ people, you probably have the resources now to get someone full-time, preferably senior. Someone who has had years of experience and knows what they're doing. Casual contract, part-time, again, hiring that consult if you don't already have established QA practices. Tips for hiring QA. Now, these are tips in hiring in general, which I'll kind of cover, just because in the last 2.5 years that I've been in this industry, I've been to a lot of job interviews, and I'm not going to call anyone out, because there is a lot of good and there is a lot of bad. So just keep in mind, if any of this relates to you, think about that. So understand the different roles. So QA engineers are people who are usually working closely with the developers, like software developers or other engineers on the team that are going to help establish those processes and also make the tools. For then the QA analysts, they're probably more the people who are going to be using those tools to test the game. Who to look for? I'm like speeding through this. I'm so sorry. People to look for. People who have excellent communication skills. This is something you'll see in every single interview or job application. Someone who can talk to people, not necessarily person to person, but can really translate an idea of what is supposed to happen versus what is actually happening. Self-learners and self-motivated. QA is tough. It is long. It is tedious work at times. It's very rewarding at times, don't get me wrong, but you need people who can do the work themselves, because usually they're not supported as they should be. Creative thinkers and problem solvers, kind of going off the last point. You need people who can play the game differently than what you think should be played, because that's where the problems happen. You know, if you're making a level and you set a boundary, you know, you've got to love those boundary testers who are going to try and walk over that boundary and test that limit. Do not assume that people are going to play by your rules. They are not. I don't. That's why I'm a tester. This one is extremely important for any role you hire, but especially when it comes to QA and people who are talking to different assets, different people on the team. You need someone who is emotionally intelligent and aware. You need someone who can communicate with Karen in art and Greg in development, right? Karen in art, she is a little bit tougher. She needs you to say exactly what you're thinking right now. Don't BS me. What do you mean by this? Oh, I mean, so there's a bit of Z fighting here, and there's like, what are you saying, Callum? What do you want from me? Where, speaking from the programmer side, usually it's reversed roles, but we know this, is that maybe Greg needs a bit more fluff. Maybe you need to be a little bit softer with Greg. Maybe you can't turn around and say, hey, this isn't working. It's like, because then they hear, oh, I did a bad job, I don't deserve to be here. And we know that's not right. They wouldn't be hired if they didn't deserve to be there. So you need to make sure it's someone who can navigate these conversations. Usually, you'll get some help with your producer with that. Your producer is someone who's talking between different aspects of the team, trying to get them all to work together. Work closely with your producer to figure out what language and glossary terms to use with particular people as well. So some special, and last one, probably enjoy your game. That's a good one. If they like playing the game, they will work harder and enjoy their time. I think that's a given, but you know. Some perks. Look for people who are the target audience. You know that if your game is enjoyable to them, it will probably be enjoyable to the wider audience that you're looking for, right? But also, choose people who are not the target audience, if you have the facility to do that. These are people who will be able to help you with video game literacy. So simple things like maybe playing someone who's never played Mario before and they're looking at playing this platformer, right? Maybe all of us, we've got this experience of this video game literacy that we know that if we press the button at a particular time, we can jump over this platform. For someone who's never played a video game before, maybe they can't read that. So hire people who are going to help diverse your game. What are we looking at when it comes to paying QA? Now, this was an interesting one. This, again, is taken from the survey. As you can see, I've covered up Australia and New Zealand because we're going to play a game. But first, if we have a look here, we see that it's quite varied across a lot of places. At some places that I've worked, it's some places like the Middle East and everything, where you don't have the stats there. But outsourcing, if you cannot afford things here, you might be able to afford things overseas. I'm not saying don't invest locally, because that is very important, but just know what you're going for. So, anyone want to take a guess? How much for 1 year? Yep?
And a spelling bug. There's 2 A's in Latin America. There's 3 A's in Latin America.
Thank you. This is a copy and paste, but thank you. Yeah. Yes?
What currency is that?
That is a good point. This is in USD. 35,000 for how? For 1 year? 1 year? Cool. We've got 1 year going over here. 35,000. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes. 40. We got anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? 45. We got 45 over here. We got 45 over here. 42. What?
25.
Oh, Matt, you can leave. Play the game or get out. So, it's none of that. This survey is majority software. Software has money. Do we have money is the question. But remember that these are the people that you're going to be hiring, especially in senior positions, which are critical for your company. Make sure that if you're going to have a long game, a long company, that you have long-standing people in QA, which is a lot about this talk. Do not ask this question in an interview. I bring it up because it's happened more than once. I'll get back to that. So you've hired QA now. They're like, let's get happy. You've hired QA. Hell yeah, good job. So what now though? Like catching bugs and stuff. So let's talk about onboarding. Let's talk about having an idea of what the milestones need to be met. If you do not, I forgot to put this in the slide, but also if you're not sure about what to be doing to prep for QA, research. It's not that difficult, but also there are plenty of resources online. You've got people in this industry who've been around for a while doing QA. They can probably give you some tidbits. I mean, if you look at Jason Im's talk last year, highly recommend, good watch, particularly because I asked a question. And so you can see it in the stream, and I'm very narcissistic. But moving on, Plan for the onboarding, including setting up emails and Slack, the tools they'll be using, and documentation. It is important. It is great. A lot of people, this is something where Jason and I differ, is where he will talk about documentation, that it is important, but you can be easy and breezy with it. Mine is just, I recently tweeted, just update it, please. Just update your documentation. Just do it. Just do it. There's been too many times that I've tried to work on a project and find out that things have changed on the day. But my only point of reference is that documentation, because I can't talk to Phil, who's in a 3-hour meeting about the next milestone. So I've only got the documentation to go off, and I say this cannot be shipped because it doesn't match the documentation. That can be a bit of an issue. So please update, or at least communicate that it needs to be updated. That's another thing. There's going to be a lot of tangents in this. I apologize. If you are planning on having a big emphasis on communication in your team, make sure that everyone understands the priorities of different communication streams. With that, I'm talking Slack versus emails. I'm talking comments on documentations versus Skype calls. Please establish what is necessary for what priority. Again, this is my own grievances, this is my own opinion, but I think establishing those foundations will make any company better. Yes, things will change, and that's good. Make sure that you review those points of communication, because otherwise one way to communicate will work with one person but won't work with the other, so you need to make sure that everyone understands what works best. But for QA, who talks to everyone, make sure that they know who to talk to and how to. Moving on. When your QA starts, onboarding, which we talked about just before, introduce them to everyone on their team and their roles. I've been to many a first day on the job where I've been interviewed to Cheryl. Who are you? Who are you, Cheryl? It turns out Cheryl's in finance. Great. And that's the only person I know. That's the only person I've met that day. That's the only person who I have point of contact with. Now, Cheryl's great. Cheryl's lovely. Don't get me wrong. But if I'm going to tell one of the programmers that something's wrong, I should probably know who that belongs to, what feature they're working on, because otherwise I can send that to Darren. Darren won't be able to tell me because they're actually working on UI. So please introduce the roles. It's an easy step. It's not that hard, but you do have to plan for it because, as we know, game development gets quite busy. So please plan. Work with QA to figure out their milestones. Even if they're there for a week, even if they're there once a day for 6 months, please make them feel as though they're part of the team. Make sure that they have their own goals of what they want to fulfill. It will make their stay a lot happier and a lot easier. Work with them to figure out a glossary and common terms already established in the team, because there's a lot of abbreviations to get through things quicker, as we know. But for QA, who might be just starting out, doesn't know that ABC doesn't equal to 1, 2, 3. And that's just me. But yeah, I know, I'm sorry. There's a lot of that. Figure out the tools they'll be using. So here are the most commonly used tools when it comes to QA. So you've got your classic bug tracking, which is usually Jira and things like that. I've used a lot of Jira and I love it now. Jason converted me, how dare he? We're working with agile workload tools, Excel and Sheets. Sheets are fantastic, as we learned this morning, and other test management kind of tools as well. There is a lot of information out there. Please figure out what's going to work best for your team as well. Make sure that QA is a vital part of choosing those tools, because what's going to work for them moving forward and establishing what QA looks like in your company stems from just one of these tools. It might be an Excel spreadsheet. Supporting QA. So this is to kind of negate all this aggression that we just had before, which will come back, by the way. Things you can do to support. Just inclusion in the team. Small step, but boy, does it make a difference. Make sure they feel included. Make sure that when they come in at the start of the day, you say hi. Make sure they're there for stand-up as well. Take part in meetings and forward planning. Being in there for important meetings like milestones, so we can plan testing and we can make sure that when we test, we will let you know, and then you can let us know if things need to be tested again. Encourage study. Now, obviously, this is kind of a weird one, because you're like, how do you study QA? How do you study testing? Well, a place you can start is the International Software Testing Qualification Board. They do exams. With that, the syllabus is available online, so you can actually look that up and download that and already know what phrases are being used when you're talking like black box testing and A/B testing and stress testing and all those fun things. And encourage doing and attending talks. There's supposed to be a slash in there, I apologize. Encourage talks. These are some QA talks from the last 3 years. I wasn't aware. I would have definitely gone to these. A lot of these are online as well, so feel free to have a look at that. I will leave that up there if people want to take photos and such. I also try to make sure that I broadcast this on Twitter later at some point, so be on the lookout for that. Sorry. Quality QA FAQs and misconceptions. Earn those Scrabble points, because Q is worth 8. I did not know that until last night. Stop it. We do not. We do not play games all day. Majority of that time is spent requirement analysis. So figuring out what is actually going to be beneficial for testing and writing out test cases. Best use of our time and everyone's time. Project retrospects and meetings, and high-level or low-level testing planning. Not actually testing, planning. It's a lot of planning to make sure that everything will run smoothly. We believe in working smart. Should QA be involved in all feature/planning meetings? No, not necessarily, but most. These are people that are going to be working on the most delicate parts of your project. They need to know the intricacies and your planning. If you're a lead and they don't know how you're thinking, how are they supposed to know that this kind of red isn't the appropriate kind of red? We want a bit more pinky red, but I can't see your color. Please communicate it to me. Communication is key. That's why have great, have good communication skills, like I definitely have. Why do we need QA? Can't we just test things ourselves? Absolutely you can, but please be aware you are learning a new skill set. Be kind to yourself. Put it on a resume. It shows that you have all those things that we've said before, your communication skills, your production skills, your eye for detail, which is another thing that always comes up in job applications. So, misconceptions. We don't need QA. You do. That's simple. We don't have enough to test. You do. If you have a single button I can do tests on that. We can do stress testing. We can do boundary testing. We can do a whole bunch of things. Environmental testing. What if we press the button here compared to outside? User experience. What if I press the button, but then my friend Lucy down here presses the button? That's right, she gets a shout out. Good on you, Luce. Thanks for being here. So yeah, the testing can be done at any stage. Don't think that it cannot. We can't afford QA. You can't afford not to. Recently, I had the privilege to go to a talk at the arcade the other day. It was PwC talking about how streaming services have influenced and changed how we consume content. You know, this is more about film, TV, Netflix, things like that. But something that I caught out of that was because streaming services are available, people now have this perception that they can get higher quality for less money. Fortnite is free. Dauntless is free. All these games that you see that are AAA, that are popular these days, a lot of them have some kind of free market. You know, there are microtransactions, things like that, but the perception is this game is tested. This game is quality. It is assured quality. QA. So, yeah, you better listen. Yeah, here we go. I promise this is not going to be too much of an angry rant, but let's chill out. Let's hang out. Quality assurance is really just testing. We know this not to be true. As you know, you've heard from me when it comes to planning and everything like that. Please, if you think it is just testing, you probably need to reconsider what you're doing when it comes to hiring as well. If you do not have the right basis and right mindset, your quality assurance probably isn't going to retain. As we know with quality assurance as well, it is usually a high turnover position, meaning a lot of people don't stay in these roles for long. Quality assurance is a great stepping stone into the industry. I do agree with this to some end. I do think that it could be worded differently though. Stepping stone indicates that it's not a place to land. It represents that you can move on from this and it is not a place to make a career. If we look at the software side of things, it is absolutely not. You can make bank if you're doing software. Why don't we take that as seriously in this industry? I mean, that's a bit harsh, but you know, you've got to have some oomph in some talks like this. Quality assurance is the last line of defense. That is placing blame, as I see it. It is not the last line of defense. Your whole team should be working together and quality assurance should be part of that team. Just because I might have tested something, I didn't push it out, I didn't press the button. Is it that person's responsibility who pressed the button, or is it mine? Is it Jeff? Is it Karen? It's everyone. If you're working collaboratively, it's everyone's fault because it's everyone's success. Please embrace that. I know a lot of people in quality assurance who feel isolated, who feel like everything falls onto them, and I think this kind of stems from this mentality, that it's up to them, especially when it comes to high turnover positions. If they're the last line of defense, do you want your newest person to be there? Do you not want your person on that last line defense to be the most well-equipped and to be the most praised? Quality assurance is a luxury role, and by that I mean it is a role that can be filled at a later date. Similar to production. Oh, I can make a game, I can put it together, I can ship it out there. I mean, yes you can, But luxury is the wrong word. It is not a luxury role. It is a role that is needed. It is a role that should be supported and cultivated. At this stage, I have not been able to really communicate with that many people who have stayed in QA for long enough to talk highly of it, and that is upsetting. But some changes are being made. These are all the good things that have come from change, from having these discussions, to meeting people online, having these hashtags #JustOKQA, attending these conferences. So a big emphasis moving forward, automation. We are working way quicker than we can. I know that doesn't make sense, but you probably will need at some point to have some sort of automation, and you need an engineer to be able to do that. You need to make sure that everyone understands on the QA team how to just let it go and let it function. People are introducing new metrics when it comes to measuring the success of testing, so you can actually see a chart of what you're doing and what you're doing right. You can, this one I really love as well, have started getting the devs to test. Does that mean that they're doing your job? Probably, but also they have a better understanding of your responsibilities, and so can share the load, as we all do when it comes to this kind of work, game development. The ideal testing of the future and how that looks. So, again, this is taken from the survey. I did a lot of copy and pasting just because I believe in a lot of it. Some standouts. Less infighting in the testing community. There is a lot of discussion being had when it comes to automation, and a lot of discussion when it comes to the responsibilities and who should be doing testing and who should be doing what. There is more realistic timelines, and I think that comes with an emphasis of working with producers and being realistic. Over-planning for testing, because as we know, you might send something out to the QA team, they test it, you send it back, comes back to QA and might need to be sent back again. And again, and again, and again. And that is 3 months sometimes. So plan for that. Better appreciation of our role within projects and other teams. We are, it's looking good. It's getting better. Could be better again. Thank you for coming today. If we have any questions, I will try to answer them best to my knowledge. But as I said, it's just okay. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Aiden. Oh, you're going to use the mic. Yeah, thank you.
So as a developer for a small team, if we don't have enough funding for a long-term QA role, what are some of the things we can do short-term to get the most out of a short timeline with QA?
Yes, awesome. Fantastic. Good question. For the stream, if that wasn't heard, if you're working with a smaller team on a smaller project and you don't have the ample time to do long QA, right? And have that there. Take those notes from before where consider part-time, consider contract, but make sure to plan and make sure, sorry, my phone is buzzing now. I'm hoping those are questions. Make sure that documentation is ready. In the interview process, ask difficult questions that are needed, like what's your experience with QA? That's always a good one. Another tidbit that I will say is make sure to be realistic with them that the role is short, because then they can plan. They can plan for that as well if they are well experienced enough. Does that answer? Does that help?
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, what are some of the tools you found most helpful?
Ah.
In a short time?
Yep. Yeah. So in respect for tools, So I know for myself, when I came to working for a small team, Excel worked well, using sheets. For me, it was also, I was doing a lot of recording of gameplay, so OBS, that kind of stuff, just so then when words failed, I can be, that didn't work. That there, that. I'm really good at talking. Yeah, and there are resources online. I do highly recommend you just Google how to write a bug report and start from there. I think if you have that as a foundation and then moving forward, and everyone on the team knows how to read that, then whoever that QA person can come in and work with that. Yes?
You had a slide earlier up for QA talks and conferences. Can you bring that back up?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wrong way. Get past all the angry. Yeah. Whoop. Hey, there you go. I did plan to actually attend one of these conferences. It was at 3 a.m. and I slept through it. Again, planning. Yes?
What do you think the split should be in terms of running through quality assurance as testing and quality assurance as kind of features and the level that they should be at? Do you think there's an ideal split?
Say that again.
So like in terms of, often people think of quality assurance as just testing, when often that expands to quality assurance as making sure a feature behaves a certain way for an end user in more of a design role.
Yep.
To what extent do you feel that split should sit? Is there an ideal?
So this is in comparison to planning and testing, yeah? Like that kind of split?
In terms of more the design assurance of quality versus the actual functional assurance.
Okay, yeah. So for the stream, the question is about what is the ratio and split for design, having that kind of UX experience and making sure that's meeting the expectations versus just bug testing like ad hoc, right? So I think it does differ on the project, but I say probably if you have more emphasis on this planning, you'll get those bugs earlier, right? If this is supposed to function this way, we know it's supposed to function this way, and usually ad hoc is a secondary of that, hey. I mean, again, it depends what your team is, what is functional, how much time you have, but ad hoc and exploratory testing is very time consuming. So if you don't have a lot of time, plan for it. I know there's plenty of good producers who plan a lot. So, work with your producers. Any other questions, tidbits? Yes?
How do you handle situations where you don't have enough money to get the hardware you actually need? Like for us, we got one obscure bug on a single graphic card, and we haven't been lucky enough to have someone with a graphic card in the office.
Yeah.
How do you manage that when you don't necessarily have all the devices you're testing on available?
Yeah. So the question was, what do you do if you don't have the correct kind of hardware and planning for that? Look, mobile's tricky. I know for a fact that's tricky. There are websites out there that give you kind of, I can't remember it, but it was like, it would give you, this is the basis for this phone and these are all the other phones that are going to be working the same, right? So with that, that's where you have to kind of do that, pardon me, that edge testing of just going like, all right, cool. So if it works here, we can hopefully assume that it's working over here. I mean, you can't be sure. Otherwise, your diving bins and all that kind of stuff. I've had to do that a few times, but I'm not going to go into my personal life. But yeah, no, hardware is difficult, especially when it comes to iOS and mobiles and everything like that. So again, I think you've got to plan ahead and look online, do all those fun Facebook Marketplace stuff. I know it's stuff we already heard, but it's one of those really, really hard ones because there's just so much hardware out there, especially for mobile. So I'm sorry that doesn't really answer the question, but yeah. Yes?
Going to answer the question.
Oh,
Outsource to device farms and use crowdsourcing.
yeah. Thank you. So, sorry, what was that again? It's just,
So you can outsource to device farms,
yep,
where they just have thousands of devices,
awesome.
relatively cheap, and you also do crowdsourcing.
Yep, crowdsourcing and outsourcing to device farms for the stream at home. Thank you very much, sir. Anything else? Yes?
Yeah, when it comes to remote QA positions, is there an expectation for like weekly work hours? Is there any idea for that? Like, what's a good average?
Sorry, what was that second half of the question?
For like a weekly, like the amount of time in a week for someone in a remote QA position to be working, like what's a good expectation that someone should have when trying to hire?
Okay, so the question is what expectations of time when it comes to remote QA?
Yes, it's not necessarily on a 9 to 5 and off.
Yeah, not on a 9 to 5. I mean, oh, okay. Sorry, it got a little bit dark. I'm going to actually bring this up. Oh, yeah, hi. I mean, it depends, especially when it comes to billable hours. It depends how you're getting paid and all that kind of stuff. But I'd say still do it at like a 9 to 5. You know, you can do that. There is ample enough testing for that, for planning as well. I mean, it's all that small stuff that is, if you set up plans to execute later, you'll have an easier time than just ad hocing your way through it. Just kind of playing the one thing over and over again, going like, oh, I think this works. You know? Yep. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can wrap up. I mean, I will properly check the hashtag later, but yeah, I think we're done. We're feeling good. Yeah, everyone having a good GCAP? I am, because I'm done. Thank you.